We've got some lovely poppies today, so we're going to go at poppies. You want to draw out a few bits, so I've got this main central flower quite big, and then this one just here, and then I've done a few loose poppies behind and a few heads. I want you to place where you think, really. You don't have to do them all. I've not done this one here because I think it's just a bit too fussy. You can pop a few leaves in. We're going to paint those in as we go. It's going to be nice and loose today. Colours wise, I've got Gamboge yellow. This is indigo with a touch of permanent rose, so it makes a really dark purple. I've got sap green, cobalt blue, and then this is a mixture of permanent rose with a touch of gamboge. So the first time I've done it, it's gone quite orange. So I've taken a little bit out and added a little bit more of the rose. You want it to be a warmer pinky tone. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to wet this. So we're going all over. Make sure you get plenty of water on so that it doesn't dry too quickly. So we've got a bit of clean film to put on. So I'm going to start with the rose colour. And coming into the areas of the poppies. If it spreads, don't worry. This is just your base. So just a few lines of the rose through there. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of the gamboge yellow. And then in with the sap green. So you're just thinking base at the minute. You don't have to get everywhere, it wants to be quite fluid. And then just a little bit of the blue. You don't want to go too strong, this is just to add a little bit of depth. If you keep it just towards the bottom section. Couple of strokes up here. And then I've got some bits of clean film. And what I want you to do is scrunch them. So we're going to try to get texture happening. We've got three main areas where you want a bit of texture. Okay. Okay, so I've popped a little bit of green, sap green, into the cobalt blue to make a darker bluier green. And then I'm going to come in and start with some of these heads. So we're just painting on to dry. And you can leave these little gaps and you can see the rose coming through. So a clean, damp brush can lift a little bit out. So you're catching the light. If it disappears, then just do it again. Do a little bit on the side here as well. Okay, so now we've done the buds, we're going to come in with a bit of the rose mix, just create any that are slightly open. I'm just painting that in the middle. Okay, so I've got this colour in here, and now I'm going to come and do the stems. So I'm just using a round number 6. You don't need to bring them all the way down. I'm going to come across with leaves in a minute. So just make sure you've got a stem in for each flower that you can see. If you use some of your indigo mix, just down one side. Whilst it's still damp, that'll give it the shadow. Okay, so we're going to go on to the leaves now. You want to choose the appropriate size brush for the leaf that you're doing. It's still that green, so if I come into this background one here, use the tip of the brush to get the effect, and if you press, it'll get wider at the bottom. And then you can drop in some of the indigo whilst it's still wet, just so you've got a bit of shadow in places. So you're just making sure you've got a nice shape. I do one of the bigger ones as well. They're a bit harder to see down here because you've got lots overlapping. So this is now with a round number 10. And it's just varying the pressure of the brush. So you're doing impression off, doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm going to drop a little bit of indigo in with the number 6. Don't want to drop too much in, it tends to shoot. Just spread that around a bit. where you've got these bits, you want to make sure you're overlapping a leaf so that you haven't got floating stems. But you're just going to do a few leaves now. Okay, so we've got the leaves in. We're going to come into the flowers now. So we're going to look at these petals. So this is your rose colour. Just start to bring these out. So I'm just picking out different folds in the petal. I don't want to do too much. I've got just a wet brush here. I'm just hitting in places just so that it's not all solid. So you're really picking out the shadow. Just make sure it's not too strong. If it's too strong, just lift a little bit out. Just going to soften in there. Okay, so have a go at that one. Okay, so we're coming now into this centre flower. I'm just going to pop a little bit of water just in that centre, just to help. Just gives me a bit more time. And then I'm looking at the shadow. So all of this shadow. And that's the first thing that I'm going to try and pull out. So it's quite a brave thing for you to do. Doesn't have to be exact. Sort of following the line round. That bit of water just gives me that extra time in the middle. So if I end up with a slightly different shape, it will still work. What you mustn't do is outline it and then come back to fill it in. You've got to start in one place and go with it. Otherwise you'll end up with a watermark. And then with a little bit of the indigo, I'm coming in to create a bit of shadow. So I'm not creating any of the detail yet. I'm just creating shadow. So if you curve the brush, you'll get that effect. And then I'm going to look at these outside bits. So again, just pull in some of those. So I've got a big section here. And because these are all hard edges, because the sunlight's catching it, should make it a bit easier. These smaller bits you can get away with outlining. So this bit here, you've got quite a bit of dark indigo. I'm going to try and get that in now. Just here. So I'm using a number 6. Get that bit in. And then this bit, you've got a bit of hard shadow and a bit of soft shadow, so you're just going to bring in the hard and then you can just soften a little bit of that in. So we need to do this in stages. So I'm just going to soften that bit in there. So this is just a bit of water on the brush, just to pick that up. Okay, so have a go at that one. Okay, so we're going to come in and start to do the centre. So if you got it drawn out, it will make it easier for you to see where you're going. What we're doing with this indigo colour is coming round, and we're doing the negative painting really, so we're going to start to bring the dark out to bring the centre. So if you make sure your brush is quite loaded, it gives you a bit more time. Start to pull those out. So I've used my round number 6 to do that, and then just with a damp brush, not to be too wet, I'm just going to soften this side in. So that's not too hard. And then I'm going to come in with the indigo on the top of here. Rinse my brush off. Just bring a little bit of the rose in. And then I'm going to pull down. This is going to start to create the shape. So you need to make sure you're doing it in that curved motion. So you're getting, so that side I've curved that way. This side I've curved this way. Okay, so that's dry. What we're going to do now is with this indigo colour, indigo mix, we're going to come in and again negatively paint the opposite side. So we're going to start to bring out the shape on the petals now. You need to make sure that this line isn't too smooth. If you've got a line writer or rigger, I just want you to just pull a few. So this is just damp and I'm pulling some of the paint. And following the curve of the petal. Make sure you don't do too much so you end up with a spider effect. And you can do, we don't want spiders. A little bit of pulling in there as well. So I'm looking at these dark areas and getting these in to start with. Remember to leave that gap. And then damp brush, pull in a little bit here, a little bit here. And the same this side, remember to leave that gap. This is just connecting it to the surface of the petal. Then I want you just to come round, so you're just going to use a tiny amount and then damp brush. So this is all negative painting to start to bring this out. So I'm not hitting everywhere. This is just giving you that little bit of shadow, and damp brush just to help to soften that in. Okay. Okay, so we're going to come in and just start to create, now this is dry, some more shadow within the petals. So this is just that same pinky mix. Just creating these extra shadows and the creases in the petals. So start on the dark area. And then you can come into the lighter areas as well. Use a little bit of water just to soften in places so that it's not all hard. And in these lighter areas, make sure that the paint's a bit waterier. Don't forget to come over the shadow area so that it connects through. Remember, less is more. So if you vary the pressure of the brush, it does quite a lot to give you that effect, that delicate effect. Then just dampen little bits. I'm coming into this one in the background now, and I've used a similar technique, which is I've brought in the pink, same as this, and then I'm just adding a little bit of the indigo whilst it's still wet, just to bring out these areas of shadow. So I'll dry that one off. Okay, so I'm going to come in now and create these dark areas on this one. So this is the indigo mix again, and there's a couple of bits in different places. And then that same thing with the centre. So we're going to come round, just create that centre. And then just fan out. All the way round, and soften that in. So with a bit of damp. And then we're going to come into the centre again. So we're just going to start that off with the indigo, and then with the damp brush drag that round so that you're creating that same effect as the last one, arching it. And dry that one off. And then you've got the darker bits the other side, so we're going to start to pull those out. Because these are littler, you can get away with not doing as much of the softening in. Just about getting the shape in. The big one's going to hold it together for you really. Remember to leave that gap where you're going to have the rest of the stamens in. And I'm going to bring that up to there. Darker you can get these, the better. If you want to fiddle with these after to get them a little bit darker, you can do. The darker you've got these areas around here, the more they'll stand out. So if I bring a little bit more in here. That extra darkness will help it stand out. Okay, I'll dry that off. Okay, so what I've done is I've got a bit of the white acrylic ink and I've come in with a little bit of the white acrylic ink and sap green mixed together just to start to just bring that bottom section out. And then I've got the indigo and rose mix and I'm just popped a bit of white ink in that and I'm just bringing this out a little bit as well. I want this to stand out a little bit more in the centre, so by just doing that it's just giving it a little bit more depth. You can add a little bit more rose to the mix for you to do those stamens as well, and you can even add a little bit of the yellow if you want. Just get a colour that you're happy with and then you can come in just to start to create that stamen effect. Make sure that you're doing this random, so random dotting line in. You don't want it to be too precise. You don't want to form a pattern. It takes a lot more to think about doing random. You could get away with not having anything and just leave it as it is really. So this is just to help bring it out a little bit more. Now I'll do the same on the other, and then I'm going to come round, so I've made a slightly redder mix with a bit of the white acrylic ink and I'm just bringing that round as well. So I'm really building up that layer. Take a little bit into that centre. So we're just building up that central bit. You can take a little bit of white in, so that just as a bit of a highlight. You can blend this a little bit, it'll just help give a little bit of light back in here. So you can just blend it with a damp brush, just so that it's not too harsh. Okay, I'm very nearly done. The one thing that I'm going to do now is just bring out a couple of edges by negatively painting in the background. So this is just a little bit of cobalt blue. I'm going to hit a few places. And this is just going to help define. So I'm softening in, so I've got a wet brush now and I'm wetting further than I need to go. And what that's doing is just giving this a better edge. Like that. It's just giving it a bit more. Hope you've enjoyed this week. See you next week. Bye.